Great. So we've got Chris and Sheree and Wendy. I know that Michelle is not going to be joining us. In fact, I don't believe she'll be attending future meetings. She's, got a new job and is cutting back a bit. So I need a motion to suspend the rules to allow us to meet remotely under the governor's authorization. Wendy
So move.
and
Second.
thank you. I also sent out in the invitation the last meeting minutes that we had was the July meeting. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve the previous meeting minutes.
Great, thank you, Joel. Do I have a
Second.
second? And thank you, Wendy. Okay, so I think you saw, I think everybody saw, hopefully everybody saw my urgent appeal for, pulling together the some information for the upcoming meeting on Monday to talk about CARP implementation and EJ implementation. But before I do that, I need to go back to assignment of note takers, since I always appreciate support in that area. Would someone be willing to take notes this afternoon?
Yeah. I mean, I'm here as a guest, but I can take notes if you want.
Laura, that would be great if you could take notes. I will obviously be reviewing the video, and so I'll be writing up some notes, but it's nice to have another set of eyes on what you hear, especially in terms of any actions or next steps. And Lauren, I should explain to the group. Of course, you along with Joel were the co-chair of the CARP working group that wrote the CARP document. And you, as I understand it, Rachel Rosner is not planning to continue as a member of the CIT. And at least for today, you are representing Citizens Greener Evanston. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then I want to move along to public comment. I don't see any members of the public here. Is there anyone that I'm not seeing that is would like to make themselves known? I think I'm viewing everybody. Okay. Moving right along to business. So we have this previous discussion about the really very timely request for the city to set aside funds to develop a CARP implementation strategy. As we all know, since we have been meeting as a CIT now for almost 2 years, the primary purpose was for this group, the subcommittee of the Environment Board, to track implementation of CARP. And that, involved, quite a bit of effort to try to figure out what that meant. Not every chapter or focus area in the CARP is very clear in terms of its goals and milestones and metrics to measure progress. So we've been, working on, creating a kind of a roadmap that would help us determine, how we can meet our goals and what we're going to use to measure it. So in the meantime, realizing that we're, far from being able to really put together a comprehensive implementation plan or action plan as other cities have done, we would really like to see the city step up and fund a contractor to create such a document that can be used to guide implementation and prioritize funding decisions, et cetera, et cetera. So as we are fortunate, I guess, to say that, on Monday, there's going to be some further discussion at a special city council meeting regarding use of ARPA funding. that will include a staff recommendation for $1 million to support staffing and programming for the sustainability efforts, including CARP and environmental justice. But that's kind of the bucket. It's described as a, kind of a general category, and it doesn't really enumerate specifically what that means. And I think I would like to propose to this group that we make that much more explicit in terms of what we think is necessary for CARP implementation, starting with a CARP implementation plan or action plan. So let's talk about that. And then, of course, I want to get into, since Chris is here, and thank you, Chris, for being here. I want to go back to where we are in terms of the dashboard. At some point, I had intended that we present the dashboard to the City Council, but with Monday's meeting approaching so quickly, there really isn't time for us to do that before Monday. But I do think that this is something on a short-term agenda that we should consider, having an opportunity to share with the City Council exactly where we are on the dashboard. But first, back to the initial comment about the implementation strategy. Lauren, were you going to say something?
Mm-mm,
Okay.
not yet.
Any comments about whether or not we go forward with a very affirmative and specific request?
Jerry, I've been making an initial attempt, not knowing this time frame that's for City Council to consider, but I've got kind of a little preliminary list of some specifics. If you want me to share my screen and you guys can see I've compiled a couple of suggestions from people and added a few of my own. If you want me to do that for our discussion.
Yeah. Can you do that?
Yeah, I got two monitors here, so that should be a nice challenge.
If you could enlarge it as much as possible for my old eyes, it's hard for me to see that.
Can everybody see the text with some green highlights?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, good. And we're looking at the right thing then. So Jerry, to some of your specifics, and this might imply a little wordsmithing on this draft letter that you're preparing too. So I would suggest in your draft letter is that just shifting the term contractor to consultant, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a little more descriptive. Oops, sorry.
Joel, as you continue, if I can just ask a sort of general question about this and the ARPA funding. So I've been wondering, well, if this idea of $1.5 million or 2 million going to CARP were to go forward, as Jonathan Nusma and Eleanor Ravel were advocating, does that preclude spending other money that we talk about in other ways, that actually supports climate action? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what you're about to lay out here. And so I'm just kind of wondering about strategy. Are we going to say, actually, you should increase it to 5 million because there's a lot we need to do, or we think you need to do the 1.5 to 2 million for basically, the narrower range of things, and also include money from the remaining 40 some million for these other things. Anyway, as you talk us through this, maybe you can.
Yeah, I think I know some of my suggestions fell in buckets of other money that at least what I had seen laid out in the ARPA kind of categories. So how I was coming at it was more money over many categories for many more of the infrastructure related pieces, I think in particular, but not to limit ourselves to the 1 to 2 million, but have that be more of a specific ask for advancing implementation in general, but I do think we should shoot for the stars and request specific allocations in other categories. So I know, and Joel can explain kind of what the information is he gathered.
Well, I think those are good thoughts because, you know, with the limitations of, you know, $1 to $2 million, your implementation is going to be limited to basically organizing the implementation. And so you know, if you're talking about kind of capital or broad distributions of assistance and so forth, that 1 or 2 million isn't going to go very far with that. So clearly those things need to be either placed in different buckets, or we need to, you know, bump up the allocation. I think distributing it among the buckets might be a more clever approach in my mind. So for example, you know, they talked about staff support. So, you know, I think that's a good thing to buy into. You need somebody dedicated on the city staff to organize this stuff. And as I keep reminding, who our new sustainability officer is going to be drinking out of a fire hose here. And so the more help that they can get, the better, more quickly things can get organized. And so once again, a consultant for a comprehensive CARP implementation plan would seem to fit into the proposed budget. A consultant for a vulnerability assessment. I think that's been mentioned off and on, but I think highlighting that is probably worth doing. There's some other projects in the works. So for example, the hydrologic and hydraulic study for the stormwater system is a work in progress like right now, but at some point there's going to be an assessment with some identification of weak points and probably some recommendations with some cost estimates on how to address those. So because those aren't known yet, it seems like some funds should be put in reserve so that they can be used for when those items are known.
Joel?
Yeah.
Back up to the top where you're talking about hiring people, because it seems like that's sort of a bucket that it's different from the other things that are infrastructure. It occurs to me that one of the things we really need, we've talked about a lot, is the development of new ordinances for all the different areas, but their ordinances is the drafting of ordinances is a particular skill. And we have, as far as I know, basically one city lawyer. And if that person is responsible for developing all the ordinances, it's going to take decades. So it seems to me one possibility here is to hire either a part-time or a full-time assistant lawyer to help draft those things, because the regular lawyer is going to be doing, I think she's probably got a full-time, she's got a full plate anyway, aside from adding, you know, developing new ordinances under CARP. So maybe we could add to this list that kind of a person with a specific skill that could be an assistant to the corporation counsel in drafting ordinances.
Well, that's a good point, Hal. You know, a lot of the ordinances don't necessarily come out of the legal department. They're reviewed by the legal department, but they're drafted either by staff or even, you know, groups like this one. You know, we'll put together it and then it'll get fine-tuned, and corporate counsel will make sure there's no hiccups in there someplace. But they aren't necessarily the originators. But to your point, having somebody who can manage that, given the limited staffing of the legal department, I think is a good idea.
That actually might be one of those additional buckets. I mean, Hal, you make a really good point. There's probably not a department or function within the city that will not, you know, need to be involved in CARP implementation and will need to be enhanced so that those things move, you know, smoothly. So that's just another one. You know, the legal department should review their capacity to undertake review of proposed ordinances. And to this list, I guess I would also add, because the bucket that is being discussed on Monday also includes environmental justice. To make this complete, that first bucket of hiring a consultant and hiring additional staff would include hiring a consultant for the environmental justice assessment and mitigation plan. But I really like
Sense.
that you structured this, Joel.
Yeah, I would just not to belabor it, but I would, being having been through Springfield activities a lot and knowing what happens in what's called the Legislative Review Board, and I think also probably almost certainly at the city level, it's no small task for a lawyer to review an ordinance for consistency with existing ordinances and format and all that. It's not a matter of just checking for typos. They have to really do a fair amount of research to make sure that the language doesn't conflict with many other things in other ordinances or in larger related documents. So I really think that it's important that the existing corporation council get help doing that, because I'm afraid that it is a time-consuming effort to do what we're talking about. And I don't think she has time to do that, and it would never happen if we just left it to one person. But anyway, that's enough said about that.
No, totally agree, Hal.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
all it takes is one lawsuit and their day is swallowed up.
Can you scroll down again, all the way, or is there more below Barbara?
Well, one more kind of funds and reserve item that I added in here. You know, the service center master plan is underway right now, and there were a number of options outlined in terms of the original cost, and those options were different levels of on-site solar versus community solar and building electrification and so forth. I'm not privy yet to what some RFP responses have been to that request for proposals in terms of what people are suggesting, but it's sort of an imminent kind of thing, at least in terms of what you can do with a building. And once again, I thought this money can be used to stretch to the good version. You know, there's kind of a good, better, best, and this week go to the best version by setting some money aside for some of those opportunities that are going to be a one-time expenditure by the city. So that's where that came from.
Is Barbara's the final one that you've got? Because I would add some things about, if we're going to do this and consider this about urban forest. Some things that I know money's needed for, that's not insignificant, consulting money.
Yeah, let's add that in. Wendy, what do you got in mind?
I think the forestry division wants to do a tree inventory, update the tree inventory. And they want to hire a consultant to develop, I'm not sure what they're calling it now, but it's a plan for natural areas and green spaces. And I think they were projecting $100,000 or $200,000 for that. And they told me that they were asking to include this in the capital budget. But you know, if there's a complete rationale for putting it in here as an equivalent. So the tree inventory would be one thing. You need to have an updated tree inventory and an urban forest management plan in order to be able to know where we are and how we're doing. The other would be a consultant to develop a plan for, let's say green spaces and natural areas on public land. So that's going to entail working with Parks and Rec, doing community outreach and all that kind of thing. This, by the way, was one of their responses to the critiques the Environment Board gave staff on the the way they started out to implement the natural areas ordinance. So we all agreed it was a good idea to step back and actually have a proactive plan and not just wait for residents to, come and knock on their door and say, I want a natural area. So anyway.
I have another thought, if I may. And I know that I've been absent from a lot of discussion, so I apologize if I'm stepping out of line here. But a lot of the things we're talking about here can be done by the city with very little interaction by public community members. And that's good. Those things have to get done. There's no question about it. But it seems to me, since most of the land owned in Evanston is owned privately, and we need to have things happening on private property, like the building electrification and transportation upgrades in houses, garages, and all the things that are in the different areas that require private property owners to do things. There needs to be some kind of outreach program overall, or maybe it's going to be part of each one. But it sort of seems to me we need to have an outreach plan to engage with the public on those areas where we really need private landowners and property owners to do things, to change behavior, or to take our money if we're giving money away to upgrade things or whatever it is. And I don't know what that looks like, if that's another consultant or if it's part of the original consultant's plan.
Well, one of the things I've seen in the past, Hal, is the consultant or the design team, whoever, part of their scope of work is to hold public comment sessions and do at least a nominal sense of outreach. I think there's a general consensus that the city's outreach only goes so far, and that to go beyond it kind of takes something beyond what the city seems capable of at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really important piece to elevate that I don't know that we've captured so far, but I agree with Hal that, it is written into the plan, this kind of PR aspect of it, and really to educate and influence behavior change. So we're collectively reaching the goals together, because we need private entities to move on this, or we're never going to meet our goals. So, I would love to ask for funds for this outreach piece, PR component. And like you said, the city only has so much reach. So yeah, I suppose then that would be a marketing consultant with this specific type of expertise, if they exist.
I appreciate that, but I have another slightly different view on it. And again, tell me if this sounds too far or crazy, but it seems to me that we have to do more than just tell people about it. It's PR. PR sounds to me a little bit light. It sounds like it's just telling them about it. Whereas, for example, I'll just give the example that has occurred to me kind of from the beginning when I started looking into thinking about the energy part. If we're going to get 10,000 single family detached homes electrified at some point, and stopping them from replacing their boilers with natural gas boilers, we have to engage with all of the HVAC companies out there so that they are working with the city to make that happen. And I don't think any of them really either know or appreciate that we have CARP. And we're certainly not working with them right now to get them to recommend to their customers something other than a new natural gas boiler that's really efficient. So the outreach, I think, goes beyond just having meetings with people and telling them about CARP, but I think we really need to sit down with the actual businesses that make this stuff happen. And I just gave one example. There probably are many like that. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just a suggestion. I would not use PR marketing. I would combine what you're talking about in some way with, as I think maybe Joel was saying, with the consultants to develop the comprehensive implementation plan. And as a subset of that, a comprehensive communication plan. I would consider using the word communication, because the kind of thing you're talking about would be included in that. And it would not be just putting messages out. But I have been reminded frequently of the city's lack of capacity in the area of communication. I mean, I just trying to work with the Forestry Division this week to do a tiny bit of tree education as kind of the laying the groundwork for the tree preservation ordinance discussions. And there's one person who handles all of that. And, you know, you kind of have to appeal to that one person piecemeal. So anyway, I think a comprehensive communication plan might be a way to refer to.
It's still
kind of
marketing.
posts.
I mean, if you don't want to call it that, it's fine.
know.
It's still,
I
yeah,
just-
but yeah,
I
comprehensive
know.
communication
I know.
plan.
Well,
And I mean, we have to leverage, I mean, the thing is, like, if you know, are looking to get funds to help people make certain changes, you know, one of the suggestions I had put forward was, you know, matching funds to property owners or business owners for investing in certain upgrades. So, but that's like a whole program that needs somebody to run it and would need, you know, funds to be allocated to it. But yeah, I mean, all of these things need to happen, but we also need to sensitize the entire community, businesses included, to whatever aspects of the plan a consultant would deem that people need to know. Like,
Yeah, I just like to weigh in here though, because I do hear the distinction between communication, whether you call it communication or outreach or marketing, it's still one directional. And I think what Hal was alluding to, and I know that we've been talking about with respect to the leaf blower issue and others, we really need to engage and listen and incorporate the, you know, the experience of the, you know, HVAC contractors and the people, you know, doing the development, and, you know, because there will be, you know, responses, there will be barriers or perceived misunderstandings, and communication is important, don't get me wrong, but I think the city is also very, has a poor track record in, you know, listening and engaging.
Yeah, that was maybe I gave a poor example by mentioning getting messages out. I think, as Laura knows, marketing and communication, I mean, it is two-way. It's not one way. That's kind of a misconception. So, and anyway, I mean, I think and it illustrates why resources need to go into this kind of work. I mean, figuring out who's communicating what to whom and with whom, you know, even that alone is part of what it takes, is breaking it down, you know. HVAC companies, maybe that's one of the groups you want to be working with. You need to understand what are their motivations, you know, how do we meet them, where do we find them, all of that in order to shift them. So anyway, it's terminology. I think actually the term PR may be more, you know, that I kind of react against that as suggesting more of a persuasive rather than the two-way, but I agree. Or outreach and communication, marketing, whatever we call it, I think we agree that we need something like that in here.
Well, I think there's some persuading to be done for a lot of people. And I think Hal's example is very parallel to the leaf blower. You're talking about a market transformation. The contractors serving their customers are going to give what the customers keep requesting, and if the customers keep requesting the same old stuff because that's all they know, they'll keep providing that. So, we address the chicken and the egg together in some fashion. So that there's a market demand out there for something besides the usual stuff. Part of our goal is to stop doing what we've always been doing. So,
Right, and I think there may be, as you're all saying, in little bits and pieces here, we're all agreeing, there may be incentives to be provided, not just to the property owners themselves, but also maybe to the businesses in some way, to encourage them to do what we're suggesting, to market the new approach, as you say, Joel. They're right now, they are out there doing what's easiest for them to recommend the best product, what they call the best product. And it may not be the product that is best for CARP. It may be best for them because they make more money selling that thing and it sounds neat because it's the latest and greatest. But I think we're all agreeing that, and Jerry uses a good word too, engagement, partnering with those entities, the businesses that will actually be making these things happen and not just telling them so that they know about it, but actually making change, making them. But anyway, I agree.
So for the purpose of how we present a request for allocating money, is this a good way to do it? A comprehensive CARP implementation and engagement plan? Does that seem like the right way to cast that?
I mean, to me, I see like a consultant for the full spectrum of implementation would develop a roadmap, and communication plan would be part of their project plan. I mean, the city is not even communicating in any consistent way on the subject that they're supposed to
Right.
be. And they're supposed to be releasing regular reports, and they're supposed to be providing updates to the community. None of that is happening, at least with any like reach, because I'm pretty well tapped into things and I don't know what's going on. So I think there's the aspect of this, but there is like the city needs to own a formal implementation and communication plan. Those should be together. There should be benchmarks that they're holding themselves accountable to. So however we suss it out, but what Hal's kind of talking about, what we're all talking about is even bigger than that. It's this engagement and outreach piece that also needs to happen.
So Lauren, how would you put that if you were to, I mean, is implementation and engagement plan, does that work? Were you suggesting just implementation and having these sub elements under it?
Right. Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm just thinking in a project management kind of linear perspective where you kind of understand all the components that will go in, because it's not just the roadmap for implementation will also have a communication component and change management that will, there's a change management within the city that should be part of it. There's internal, external communication players. So in terms of like a project management, how this should be managed by like an external consultant, like there will be all of these different elements to the larger implementation roadmap.
Right.
I guess sorry, Jerry. I'm just going to say real quick, we can't create the program in order to make a suggestion for ARPA allocation. So
Right.
I think what we want to do is just make sure we encapsulate the key ideas, mostly so they don't get lost or misunderstood.
Right.
There.
Yeah. And Joel, I think it's fine what's there, the implementation and engagement plan wording. My only fear is that implementation will be the main thing, and that the engagement part will be kind of a weak add-on. And I'm a little bit afraid if it's not by itself, it'll get lost or it'll be given short shrift. But if we keep beating that drum while we're describing what we mean by implementation and engagement, then maybe we're okay. I'm not trying to make another bucket necessarily, but if everybody thought that was more likely to be effective, then I would go for that.
Well, Hal, why don't we identify them as separate, and if somebody wants to combine them into one, they can.
Well, I was going to suggest, kind of building off of what Lauren said, that the, CARP implementation plan is this, very fully developed roadmap that includes full community engagement, or something that that describes the characteristics of an implementation plan has all these elements in it. And then we can get into the detailed descriptions at a later time. Right now, we could just say an implementation plan that serves as a roadmap for CARP and includes full community engagement.
It's okay with me. That's fine. I didn't mean to suggest it had to be different, but Joel, I appreciate your separating it. I agree with Jerry makes a good point. I mean, if we, as I say, if we keep explaining what we mean and making sure that it doesn't get lost, because we have to be there at the table, continuing to make sure that it doesn't get pushed aside and made into a minor project.
And even for thinking about how much money are we talking about? So before we arrive at another number that we're going to suggest, I mean, it is not a minor thing to develop and carry out. You don't want a roadmap to your communication and engagement plan. You want to do it. I mean, I was just looking at the city's website yet again. I go and I want to see the climate action plan, and it's like it's even the website is kind of a joke if you look at the city/climate. So it has to be done, and it's going to take resources. And the roadmap gives a framework, but it doesn't get it done. So
yeah. So I mean that actually leads to the idea of in any of these buckets, what are, as you say, Wendy, what are we talking about in terms of money? Are we talking about one person? Or are we talking about a team of people, and that requires more dollars? It's not one person. You're talking about salaries for a bunch of people, and an engagement plan. It sounds like, I think that's not a one-person job, but I don't know how to say that here unless you're just going to say, well, that's another $1 million or something like that.
Well, I've just ballparked it in my head. I've mentioned this to a couple of people already. Another city staff person is $75,000 a year, just in round numbers. A consultant for one thing could be another 75, and then you've got another 75 for whatever. So there's, just in round numbers, there's your 200,000 a year, and it gets used up pretty quickly in the proposed allocation right now.
And that's not including benefits or overhead.
Well, I mean,
75,000. No, I've done the real cost is considerably more than that, unless they're paying like nothing for this. So yeah.
No, definitely. But I'm just using that as a mental guide, that you sort of have these basically 3 simple categories of allocating that level of money. A staff person, a consultant, and then some miscellaneous. But they might not be 3 equal pieces, but
yeah, we need a lot more than this. This is the bottom line, a lot more.
Yeah.
Right.
We've been talking about 2 different things here. I just want to clarify, at least in my own head, that we've been talking about structurally how to, get this roadmap. What do we need to do to stand up a program that includes community engagement, includes some, directional way of setting priorities. That's just the administrative part. Then what also you're talking about, Joel, is all this other work, and others have, the H&H study implementation, the transportation study implementation, all the various things that actually have to occur are much more expensive. I mean, that's going to be, the dollars are just, and they're not going to be necessarily just ARPA funding, but they're going to be ongoing actions that are required. So I kind of want to, in a way, separate those 2 things, because the conversation on Monday is strictly about this bucket that the staff proposes the $1 million for. I think that after this conversation, it's clear we think that's not going to be sufficient for the planning strategies and community engagement that we need to even put a plan together. Let alone, carry out all its different aspects over not just a 5-year period, but over, time. So how can we capture these thoughts in a concise way and get them out to the city council members and the mayor by the end of the week?
We need more money. That's a concise
Yeah, I agree.
format.
I agree. I mean, I think to say, we appreciate what the staff has proposed. earmarking some of it for CARP. We appreciate the council members who push for a higher number. We still think that's not adequate for what's absolutely bare minimum that we need to be doing right now. And that includes, for example, and then, maybe not going into details, but just having worked through these details helped us come to that decision, right? That it's really not enough, because look at what, if one of us was told right now, you're in charge of taking CARP forward, this would be kind of the starting place, right?
I also think that we can't let them say, okay, this narrowly say this is for CARP. That's what you get. It's that we have to ask them to be more strategic and look at the whole package through a CARP, framework, and say, okay, I want to see CARP in every category, and I want to see, we have to put the money where the plan is and see across all these categories what aligns with CARP, what are we going to put money towards. So I would be very firm in asking them to not pigeonhole CARP into one line item. It's selling it short.
Right. I definitely want to make sure. I tried to add a sentence at the end of my proposed note to that effect, but that's much better said, Lauren, and maybe that should come up first. We appreciate the staff work in allocating funds, but here's the reality is that everyone needs to be thinking along these lines and coming up with their individual strategies for accomplishing this work. I just want to get something out there, and certainly these are not comprehensive. These are great examples of what needs to happen. And they should be listed, maybe, Joel, if you're pulling this together as here are some examples of the work that we see the CARP calls for, but it is by no means a complete list.
But on the other hand, I think making the point that these are things that either one absolutely have to be done right now, like the overall roadmap, and in addition are ready to go right now. So, so those I think have to be earmarked or they'll disappear. This we all know, if you just say, think about it in all the different areas, think about this equity filter, think about the CARP filter, it's not going to happen, or it's going to be an ongoing struggle. So while there's a chance, get as much as possible. I think I'm with Lauren. More money.
Totally agree. I love that. Okay, is it possible, Joel, and others, can we use the platform we have on the CIT share drive to create this message?
Well, I was thinking, Jerry, since you've got this letter started, maybe we just kind of bring it in as elements of the letter you're suggesting.
Right. Yeah, no, I think so. It shouldn't be horribly long, but it could be, maybe a couple of pages if they were not going to read any more than 2 pages is my concern. But we could maybe add an attachment. I was thinking about, and the next thing on our agenda is to look at the dashboard. Perhaps some of the dashboard elements could be attached to the memo.
Joel, I'll bet you, I saw you were on that letter earlier, that's on the Google Drive that Jerry had started. Maybe would you mind taking some of what you've got from your outline and integrating it into that?
Yeah, I can do that. Sure.
Because I think you've got it all in mind now.
Well, like I said, I've been collecting things from Lauren, from Barbara Miller. She's got a transportation component that she was highlighting as, it was identified in CARP as a preliminary step. And it's, part of it is what this group is gathering for, and that is getting some basic data and information on transportation. But how do you do that? So,
So it's essentially low-hanging fruit. That maybe thinking of it that way. You know, we are urging, you know, without delay, the things at the top. But in addition, there's low-hanging fruit ready to go right now. Use this money for that.
yeah, I mean, there's some things that are ready to start now. We don't have to wait on some of these.
Do we want to, okay, and I totally agree. I think making sure we characterize these as, you know, these are ready to go. But in terms of hiring the consultant for the comprehensive CARP implementation plan or implementation plan and engagement plan, do we want to put a dollar amount out there? In my conversations that I've had with Jonathan recently, you know, we're reacting to a staff proposal of $1 million, which we clearly think is inadequate. Because it's not going to get us where we need with the vulnerability assessment, these, you know, the additional staff for offices sustainability. And quite frankly, his proposal to add $500,000 to that initial staff proposal over a 5-year period was for environmental justice. And when you pigeonhole that in with the rest of this, there's not enough money. So I guess my question is, do we want to propose, you know, 2 million? Do we want to propose 2.5 or 3 million? I mean, what do you think is
At least 5 million.
okay?
That's just off the top of my head, the gut feeling. Yeah. And given the scale of, you know, what other people are asking for, honestly, you know.
Mhm.
Right. What do the others think?
Well, one thing that never seems to be in the city conversation is the grant universe. And we never hear about, you know, okay, what if you set aside 3 million and that'll get you part way, and then the rest of the way, you know, somebody's digging out a grant to help offset the costs
I was
of
going to
doing the
say
extra work.
hiring a grant writer would be a
Thank you.
worthwhile investment for this.
Well, it takes time to get grant money, and it takes time and skill to administer them. Having had experience with staff who are not fully capable of administering grants, I'd say if the money is there in this ARPA fund, like, get as much as possible right now.
Right.
You know, yeah, it could always use more through grants, you know. And actually, Emily Okala, one of her functions is supposed to be applying for grants. But, you know, you spend time getting a $50,000 grant, it's not worth it. You know, it's really hardly worth it.
I would add to that what's happening with CEJA right now. 2 aspects of CEJA are really important for us. One is that the state legislature has basically quintupled the amount of money that it's putting into renewable energy now in many aspects, including environmental justice. And I mean, it's huge how many billions and billions of dollars over FEJA. FEJA was kind of like the first pilot program, and now they've you know, got 4 or 5 times the amount of money that they're putting in this time. They're really serious about meeting the goals. So that's one message that I think the city needs to hear loud and clear, is that this is not just a nice to have thing, and it's not a little bunch of people sitting on the sidelines going, you know, we really would like to have this. The state is really interested in doing this, and the money is actually being provided in many cases for these projects. So we should be able to, as Joel says, go out and get that money, just like everybody else. We may not, and maybe it goes priority to the lower income areas of Evanston, but nonetheless, that could be significant dollars that are available to us.
Maybe that's what the additional staff and the Office of Sustainability could have grant writing tasks.
So I just had an odd thought, and I'm wondering now if, you know, based on who's here at the table, you know, Hal has a very specialized message, and I think a very powerful one that, you know, it kind of resonates that this is this is something we can't ignore, and that the time is right to get on the, just get on the train, get on the bandwagon. This is happening. We are potentially losing if we don't join this movement. That could be a message from Hal Sprague to each of the city council members. We
Okay.
could also have a message from Wendy and Cherie as co-chairs of Evanston Environment Board to each of the city council members. I like the idea of having Joel Freeman and Lauren Marquez Viso as co-chairs of CARP working group who wrote the thing, to give their individual perspective directly to city council members on, this is an opportunity. And then, I'm happy to send whatever from CIT, but I don't think we can over communicate the importance of this discussion, and how, because I do think that there are city council members who are not on board, who will, question that this is an environmental initiative and very, nice to do, but not necessary. So what do you think about, multiple prongs of attack here?
Are you talking about written, verbal, or both, Jerry?
Oh, I actually, verbal would be great. If you can have a Zoom meeting before Monday with your individual council member in your ward, that would be ideal. But I do think you should put something, if you can put something in writing, an email, an individualized email to each of the council members. That was sort of my thought, that some of them, everyone will read an email from the two co-chairs of the working group. Everyone will read an email from the two co-chairs of the environment board. They will. But your individual I'm planning to write a message to my council member, and I think the individual ones might have some, they might be read.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we'll have a basic template that Joel is going to help redraft, right? That we can be
Right.
drawing on.
Yeah, I was assuming that Joel was good with that, creating this kind of overall thing. And then in your message, Joel and Lauren, could be very brief. It's just kind of, hey, remember back in 2018, or, when we developed this thing,
Mhm.
it's time,
Mhm.
we need your attention. This is critically important. But yeah, we should send all of these.
So is that going to be separate from what you started as a letter, Jerry?
Yeah, again, I am making an assumption here, and I thought you agreed to this, that you were going to incorporate some of what we've been talking about here, the consultant and all this, into the draft that I have. And maybe you feel free to cut and edit what I have. So that can go from the CIT, or it can go from, each of us individually or whatever, but I'm happy to send it as a CIT work product.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I grasp how many templates are getting created here.
Yeah, and then separate from that, I'm asking if there could be a Cherie Wendy email, and a Joel Lauren email.
I think those two would be the most comprehensive, and if you can suggest, Joel, ways of differentiating them so they complement each other. If you have time to do that, that would be great. But somehow we can communicate about that. Does that make?
I would be fine. Actually, it might be more powerful then if you and Cherie want to be the authors of this memo that I started. Because I think that's a little bit more impactful than a subcommittee of the Environment Board in terms of, paying attention to the message.
I assume Cherie will say, sure, she's on here listening. I mean, yes. I just think that, you know, who's sending the most comprehensive one? And, you know, is that Cherie and me? Is that Joel and Lauren? Is it, you know, they echo each other? So, you know, I mean, Joel and Lauren, maybe if you can, since you've got it in your head right now, if you take the next step, we can be in touch offline about how to do that. But I guess today is Wednesday, right? So we want to get this out by Friday, or?
I do think we need to get it out by Friday at the latest.
Okay.
So, because they're going to get their packet on Friday and they'll need to prepare.
Can you go over that a little bit for, if I can, I would like to engage with my alderman, but I would love to know the timing of the different things that you're talking about. Getting packets, the meeting is when? It's Monday night, it's a special meeting of the council?
Correct. It's a special meeting of the council on, I believe the entire agenda is on ARPA, but I could be wrong about that. But I think it's a special meeting. Yeah,
What time?
I don't know.
Okay.
I
Is
think,
that's gonna be on the website, I assume, on the calendar.
yeah, it's usually published on Friday along with the packet and all the other information. So it should be available by Friday.
Who is your alderman, your council member, Hal?
I'm sorry to say it's
Which-
Tom Suffredin.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just wondering, yeah, because Jonathan Newsom's my council member, so I
Yeah,
don't think
I'm
I
not
need
gonna-
to
I'm not
persuade
gonna
him of
get-
anything.
I'll be lucky if I get him to read anything I give him, but I will try.
Every council member has an equal vote and they're all important. So we really do need to make an effort to reach out. Is there anyone in here that is in, let's just go through the wards. First ward,
That's me. This is Cherie.
thanks, Cherie. Second ward,
I'm in second ward.
great. Oh, fantastic. Okay, third ward, Melissa Wynn? No. Fourth ward? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
I am, yeah.
Fifth ward.
I'm in the fifth ward.
Awesome. Okay. Sixth ward, you just said that's Tom, right?
Yep.
Seventh ward.
I'm in seventh.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm in eighth. And then ninth ward. Is anyone in the ninth ward?
Is that Cicely's ward?
That's Cicely's ward.
Our other properties there, but I don't live there. But I can write to her.
That would be awesome. It looks like we've
Mm.
got this covered. I'm amazed.
So are we gonna take, are we gonna give our personal message and then attach maybe Joel's message or somebody, you know, 2 or 3 other ones to it so that they can see what everybody else is seeing, or is that gonna just all be in everybody's packet anyway?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think we have to draft whatever is going to everyone by the end of the day tomorrow to get it in the packet on Friday.
Oh, I don't think it's going to make it to the packet. I
Oh,
don't
it's not gonna
know.
make it to the packet.
Friday,
Okay.
the packet will be published. Yeah.
If I were able to, for example, email Suffredin something Friday or Saturday, and I could add and give him my personal note about, you know, saying something about what I was saying earlier, whatever you want me to say, you know, whatever but then attach to it 2 or 3 other letters that Jerry, you and Joel and anyone else writes. Maybe that would be a good way for him to see not only what his own constituent is saying, but also what others are saying.
Yeah, that can work. I don't want to be redundant in terms of what they're reading, I guess, but we can certainly do that, and that might be a seamless way of drawing, you know, his attention to this other document.
It also, to me, it just sort of adds credibility to what I'm doing. I mean, when I am a constituent, but if I don't appear to be the only one saying these things, and then we've got members of the actual environment board saying these things. I mean, I do have a role here, but you guys have a little more a title than I do, so that would be helpful to me, I think.
Right, right.
But I thought your angle is talking about CEJA, right?
It would be.
Which I think is really powerful, and you know, So.
I mean, I
anyway,
have, for example, that I can provide if I don't know that it makes, I would have to think about it, but there is a very good summary. It's about 20 pages. I don't expect them to read it, but to show the fact that there is this 900-page bill that was just passed. Literally, it's 950 pages, and it's got billions and billions. And I might be able to take out like 3 statistics and put it in my little email and say, by the way, did you know the state's doing this, and this is how it compares with FIJA, and they're serious, and then and I'm attaching, the summary and the bill just for if you ever felt like, looking at page 47 or whatever, that would be kind of my legalistic approach to giving him just enough so he can see what I say. And if he wanted to, he could go verify what I'm saying by looking at my added attachments.
Well, it just seems to me that what you're saying, the power of what you're saying is for Evanston to be able to take advantage of this,
Mhm.
it has to have an adequate staffing
Infrastructure,
and an
yeah.
adequate plan. Yeah. And
Human resources infrastructure.
we can't let this opportunity go. And, the fact that this is really in the vanguard nationally. I mean, I think appealing to that is also good. So anyway, I mean, I just wonder if Suffredin would maybe Peter Braithwaite would be interested in that more, I don't know, that financial angle in a way. We need to be able to exploit this opportunity.
The more I think about it, Hal, I think your message is one that all the city council members would benefit from. And if we do the individual ones in our own ward, it's more, hey, I'm a constituent and I care about this. And by the way, I'm looking to you to step up and support this overall effort. Not a long message or detailed message, but hell, if you write up your thing, I would either include it in my message to, Devon Reed, my council member, or I would hope that you would send it to all of them.
I think you should. I think it's like a bulletin in case you missed it. This major piece of legislation was just signed. And it really means a lot for the city. And we need to figure out how to take advantage of it.
Right. Well, I will make that a project to work on in the next 48 hours. I will try.
There's got to be some model out there, right? I mean, the Sierra Club's been sending out kind of.
Well, I would be cutting and pasting. I'm not going to draft. Yeah. I'm not Thomas Jefferson. I'm going to try to use the summary and summaries that have been written by the IEC and folks like that. Some of it's a little bit too hyperbolic for me, so I want it to sound down to earth and realistic and real. But I will draw from those other places. But it's going to take some time. I need to set aside time to do that and make it happen probably.
And certainly before we send anything out, we should see what the packet consists of for this meeting so that we can fine tune that addresses what's contained in the packet.
Maybe we should if the packet is going out Friday, and can we see it? Can we see it Friday?
Yeah.
It'll be posted to the website.
Does it make sense then for us to have a Zoom meeting on Saturday, the group of us?
We could. I'm just concerned that we not wait until Sunday to get stuff out. That's just, I think that's a mistake. They're going to start reviewing this over the weekend. I actually don't think we can wait until the packet is published, but we could refine our message and add another one if you think that was wise. But
I'm agreeing with you, Jerry. What I was suggesting is that those of us who are drafting do our drafting between now and Friday, and then we meet on either late Friday or early Saturday to look at all of it, and as you say, adjust it or put it together in the right sub package.
That's not what I was saying.
Oh, sorry.
I'm actually saying that we need to send this out by Friday morning.
Okay.
Or Friday at noon. So they get it at approximately the same time they get the packet. Because if they don't get it until Saturday, the chances of them digesting it when they're digesting what I've learned about, some of the city council members is that they are so inundated with this, 300, 400 page packet that even reading their email is going to be challenging.
Right.
So it's a very bad time to send them on
More.
Saturday, let alone Sunday. So,
Jerry, a good question. Since you've been in touch with Jonathan about this, just are you going to give him a heads up in the next day that we're going to come back saying this, what you proposed isn't enough, Jonathan? I mean, just so he and Eleanor also, so they're fully prepared for our saying we need to increase that even more.
absolutely. Yeah. The last thing I want to do is blindside our allies.
Right.
Yeah. So did we settle? I mean, 5 million is, is a little bit pulled out of the air, but it does send a message that we believe that a significant, investment is necessary to move forward. What do we all think? If Hal's good with the 5, Lauren and Joel? Cherie?
Remind me of the total package again? What's the total money that the city has access to?
43 million, I think.
Yeah, 42 or 43. Yeah.
About 20% of that's already been allocated for certain things. So we're talking about, what's left. And, I
When
think
you put it that way, it almost sounds like 5's not enough.
Right.
I think I like the wording at least $5 million, because then we're not contradicting
And
what Jonathan's saying, but we're saying as much as you can find, but at least 5 million.
Right.
I think it's important to say that for implementation and administration, but we also expect there to be CARP related items in other, buckets, because I just don't want to lose an opportunity where, this money is for recovery and resiliency is a part of that, and moving our city forward in all of the aspects of CARP all ties into a more resilient, more, sustainable city. And I think we need to capitalize on that.
I hope somebody wrote that down. That was great.
Yeah.
I didn't, and I'm taking notes because I'm talking. I can't do 2 things at once.
And this is being recorded, so hopefully, I don't know if Shanika, you can hear this, but I hope you'll post the video as soon as possible because it will help all of our memories. That was beautifully said, Lauren, and that's kind of why I would actually like to have you and Joel, stepping out as the, working group co-chairs, because you are the, kind of senior CARP officials, and I think your perspective is extremely important and should be heard.
I'll just submit a TikTok video of me screaming into the wind. Just kidding.
that'll get their attention.
Maybe you could lead us all in that, Lauren. That would be a sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like spliced together, all of us screaming one after the other.
Yeah.
Ah!
On the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
Or regret.
I have a question about the money. I don't really know. Is it a one-time check of $43 million, or is it something over several years, or how does it work?
My understanding it's one time, Hal.
Yeah, but you can put a
This is
plan,
it.
as long as you're obligating the funds, the payout period can be longer than.
You can spend it over a period of time if you want to.
Right. I mean,
'Cause I
that's why
think-
they were proposing 5 years for the 1 million.
Right.
If it's invested properly too, the earnings off of it could help considerably fund a lot of additional work. Everything, if it's invested properly.
And if we added this, I think, I don't know, Joel, if you have it in your notes, but the idea of getting a grant person to take advantage of the available funding that is out there for, CARP implementation. So you've got the place funds in reserve for implementation of the H&H study and other things, but if you could scroll down, I don't know if that's still there. On-site solar, yeah, but just be sure to add about, getting grants. So we're capitalizing on the existing funds, but we're also, building on them to get additional resources.
Can I throw something else out? I'm sorry, I meant to mention it earlier, but the city municipal, the zero emissions strategy that Elevate Energy is working on. Should that be thrown in here too as, I mean, just transitioning the vehicle fleet, for example? I've wondered, like, isn't that like a really concrete thing they're ready to do now? Every year they buy new vehicles, new equipment for maintaining parks. Anyway, just a
Yeah,
thought.
so that's a place funds in reserve to implement the zero emission strategy. Yep. Okay, I'm aware of the time and also about all of the various assignments that everyone is taking on. Joel, you and I will talk in the very near future. Thank you so much for suggesting this approach, because I think it's really great. Wendy and Cherie, do you have any questions about what you're doing next? Are you gonna, so Joel and I will like put this together, but I think maybe one idea is to give it to you and Cherie to send.
Cherie,
That sounds good.
thoughts? Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Okay, so
So
Joel,
we'll wait to hear from you, right?
we'll get you a draft tomorrow, Joel.
I'll do my best. I have to take my wife to a medical procedure tomorrow, but that'll give me a little dead time to work on it, actually.
Thank you.
I have the same issue, so I got it.
Thank you. Well, thank all of you. I mean, honestly, this is this is just one moment. I don't think it's the last moment, but it's an important one to grab, and let's see what we can do. Having said that, and with Chris still on board, I'd like to know if we could pivot over to the dashboard, because at some point within the next month or so, I hope we will be in a position to present the dashboard to City Council, the mayor, and others. And certainly the new sustainability coordinator. So let's see if we can pull that up. And Wendy, thank you for your tutorial. It still has to sink in, but let's see. Okay. Now, if I can share my screen. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I have to run. I'm so sorry.
All right. Well, thank you for sticking with us. And if you have any thoughts, could you send them along?
Yeah, part of me, I'm curious what, if and when we present this to council, kind of what we want the narrative to be. If this is like, this is our take about some of the specific goals that we have and some of the specific metrics that we track, or whether this should be about just like gesturing at something that they should think about implementing themselves, and kind of what the plan for that should be. So I just want to think about that, but knowing that this is kind of taking a backseat to more pressing concerns, perhaps we can talk more about it at the next meeting. But I'm so sorry that I have to run. But we can catch up maybe at the next environment board meeting, Jerry.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. What is the narrative that goes along with this?
You know, if I just can throw something out as a background thought. So Kara Pratt, that's her name, right, is starting on Monday. And we talked about orienting her. I guess I looked back at this and thought, this would be kind of a useful way to orient her from our perspective as members of the community who know some stuff about what's been going on with the city around this. So it's a
What's-
lot easier than thinking about
Who is
going
this
to city
person?
council.
And
The new
what's their
sustain-
role?
The new sustainability coordinator.
Is
Oh, okay.
taking Kumar's place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, unbelievably, she's starting on Monday, and
Wow.
hasn't been announced. So
Kara?
Cara Pratt?
Kara?
Yeah, CARA.
CARA.
Kara.
So,
I don't know how she says it.
yeah, I'm not sure either. But yeah, I asked Jonathan when the announcement was going to be made, and I think he said sometime next week, but that doesn't make any sense because she starts on Monday. So
They like to keep these things under wraps for a little while, I think. I think they want them to actually arrive. And
Ties back into your point about the inability to communicate at the
Yeah.
city.
no kidding.
She's got a lot of paperwork to fill out on Monday, I think.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah. You know, we're all ready to pounce, and this poor person is probably not be able to know what's here.
She doesn't even know where her desk is yet.
I'm sure she knows how enthusiastic environmental activists are, though.
Yeah,
I would hope.
true. So here we are. I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm really pleased with what I've seen. And so the renewable energy piece, I don't know, Joel, do you want to talk about this for a minute, or should we just skim right through it, since we really do need, I think Chris is absolutely right. We need some context in which to present this.
I would like it if you could just zip through it because I'm going to have to go in less than 10
Yeah,
minutes. So
I also have to go
I would
get my
love to
son,
see-
but I want to see each slide.
yeah, if
Okay.
you could just run through it, Jerry, that'd be great.
Renewable energy, you've seen that. Building efficiency. You know, we don't really have the numbers in here in terms of buildings and LEED certified buildings in Evanston, but I'm guessing that that's available. So this is the idea is this is the kind of information that would be presented. You know, zero waste I was just hoping that Chris was going to stick around because we had this original report. And I think we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on zero waste. The fortunate thing is we have this new solid waste coordinator, Brian Zimmerman, who seems to be really fantastic. And he is talking to Dave Stonebeck about creating his own subcommittee for zero waste and circularity. And if he's successful, I don't know if that's a subcommittee to the Environment Board or what it would be, but he would chair it, and it could be great. Transportation and mobility. Okay. So this one needs some help, I think, putting some figures in there.
The data collection piece, that preliminary step is.
Yeah, this is the harder one. But we can work on that, obviously, before we present. Urban canopy and green space. So I just love the heat island photos, or the tree canopy photo that shows heat impact. Do you want to, oh, sorry. Do you want to go back? Do you want to say anything about this, Wendy?
Yeah, I guess I should clean this up. I think I would, I can ask the staff for graphs that show the age composition and carbon stored. It does take some explanation, so I'm not sure how to make that succinct, but the point of that is the forest as a whole is too young, and the carbon stored by public trees by ward is a way of seeing that there aren't as many really big old trees in the poorer wards. So that's what those graphs are about. And we've seen, versions of these from Michael Callahan, but anyway, sure. And I just threw in some new updated things that obviously run over too much, so I'll have to cut those down. But
well, I think the powerful thing that you mentioned earlier in the meeting was about, the prioritizing the tree inventory, prioritizing the plan for natural areas and green spaces, just really managing our urban forest and having, maybe that's a context that we present along with this. This is kind of the picture of what is here, and that's why it's so important,
Mhm.
right? So that's really great. Excuse me, the water supply aspect. We had this idea of showing water consumption and trying to identify water conservation effectiveness so that water consumption is reduced over time, but I don't know that we have the data. Joel, do you remember where this came from?
Well, that came from data that Dick and I worked on from Daryl at the water plant.
Got it.
So the I think one of the distinguishing things there is the separation of single family and multifamily service, water service versus the total. And then, ultimately, how does the unknown component is how much of that is actually due to landscape irrigation and so forth. And how do you relate that to rainfall for those particular years? So that's that's a refinement that is yet to be done, if it can be done.
Okay, so this one will benefit from a little bit further work, but it's promising. And this is the tough one, Lauren. This is the area that Rachel and I have spent, and others, really hours talking about how do we gauge behavior change? How do we capture this? And it partially was what we were talking about today. I don't know that the metrics, these aren't probably the metrics, certainly not number of events or, but I, Lauren, if you were able, at some time within the next couple of weeks or maybe couple of months, put together some of your thoughts on how to gauge our success in outreach, education, and behavior change, that would be so valuable because we've been really struggling with this.
Oh, Jerry, I think you
Yeah, I
skipped
think
over
that's hard.
stormwater.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, there
No,
it is.
that was a major skipping over.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. So Joel, can you say a couple of words about this chart? I'm sure you put it together.
Well, I processed what some other people had written down. So one of the things that Dick Lanyon somehow came up with this imperviousness history shown in the graph. And I substituted that into one of the other charts that was in there before, just so that people could contemplate its proper place there. But I think what it shows is that we've kind of used up, we've kind of maximized the amount of ground we can pave over and build on and all that stuff.
Wow.
And we did that a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, I love this chart.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most dramatic graphics in here.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is there are a couple of other things that actually multiply the bad effects of this. This is one of three things that causes flooding in the urban space, and it is the amount of impervious surface. Two other things are the age of the drainage system that we put in between 50 and 100 years ago was not built for this amount of impervious surface. So that's number two, which again, those two things together are going to just result in a lot more flooding. And then the third thing is climate change. So the intensity of the storms has increased in the Midwest. It's about 30% more intense rainfall than we had 50 years ago now. So when it rains per hour, it rains more per hour. So it doesn't have time to even get into the storm system if it is going anywhere. So this is going to the climate resilience part of the plan, but it's really critical that we maybe take note of all those things that are happening all at once. And this is just one of the three important parts of that.
Well, this is where the hydrologic and hydraulic study is going to illuminate what the forecasted rainfall is going to do to the existing system, at least
Right.
in a modeling sense.
Right, and underscores the importance of funding to implement the recommendations of that study.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
wow, this is really powerful. Good job.
And then the just in the bottom center there, Claire had a bunch of kind of like refrigerator type magnets prepared that essentially say that.
Yeah.
And then that goes with the community alert about reducing your water consumption during a forecasted heavy rainfall, so you don't pile on the rainfall with your laundry and things like that.
Right. Right. No, it's great. It's all part of that public, communication, outreach, engagement piece.
I hate it when it rains on the only day I've planned to do laundry. I'm always like, ah!
I'm happy this summer. I'm happy if it ever rains on anything.
I know,
It's so
seriously,
tired.
it's so dry.
Yep.
This is great.
On that last one, the public behavior change and all that, the signing up for community solar, I'm just thinking of group actions, not this carbon footprint individual actions, which I think we really need to avoid. But that would be one. And another one, shoot, what was I? Oh, we might be able to get figures on participation in composting opportunities. That's another, anyway, that scale of thing we might be able to track down.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are great ideas for that. So Lauren, we'll talk more about your ideas and maybe incorporate some of those good suggestions in this one, because we need something.
But I like thinking about this as orientation for the new staff person.
Yeah.
It would also help us figure out, like, what do we want to do with this more generally, or maybe it's helpful to her, that she'll say, oh, this is great. If you can keep doing this, I can use it. Anyway.
All right,
Yeah,
folks, I'm gonna have to go, but
Bye,
this
Hal.
is really good. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Hal.
Okay.
Thanks, Hal.
Yeah. In some respects, I think she might be able to, gather some of the missing data as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, she should. She should, right. She should be better able to do that than we
Monday
as
afternoon. Yeah.
outsiders, right?
So then we did, separate out city operations because we want, even though it's only 1% of the total inventory, we continually making the case is the city should lead by example. And so some of what I tried to present not in here, but some of the work that I presented to the Utilities Commission was about how important it was to lead by example. And as I, sort of complained to Joel, I don't know if I did a very good job of engaging them on taking on some additional responsibility to track this. But I'm sorry, my computer is like acting weird. Anyway, so we'll need to work on that and fill in some of the data there. And then the last one is on climate equity. This is the environmental justice component as well. The vulnerability assessment that the CARP asks for would probably populate some of this, I think, right, Joel?
Well, you'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I
don't even know.
The vulnerability is multidimensional. I think in our CARP working group discussions, we probably determined that most of the vulnerability was people oriented, not not the physical landscape so much. Although there's some interactions, but you're worried more about the people. You're not worried about the lake flooding the town or anything like that. You're worried about the impact on citizens.
Right. And well, to some extent, it's that there are neighborhoods that are where infrastructure has been allowed to, decline and that they're disproportionately vulnerable. So that, I think that's going to come out of the vulnerability assessment. At least it's my hope that once that's done, this is going to become a lot more clear.
Okay, I have to go. I'll send the notes to you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Lauren. Thank you, everyone. I think I'm gonna just I appreciate the time. This has been a really rich discussion. Wendy, you're on mute.
Sorry. The Environment Board will be meeting in a couple weeks, 2.5 weeks, I think. So if there's anything that you want to bring up for the agenda, don't forget to let Sheree and me know. And Jerry, maybe we could talk for a second afterwards about this idea of another letter. Okay. Thank you, Joel, for what you're about to
Yeah,
do.
thank you,
You've already
Joel.
done it. We
Well,
will pick up on it. You're very good at being succinct and meaningful.
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get it close.
Yeah,
And
good.
good luck tomorrow.
That's good. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks,
All
you
right.
guys.
All right, I'll call you, Jerry, okay?
Okay, good. All right.
Bye, and thank you.
So I need a
Anita.
motion. I need a motion to.
So move, I think we've all
Okay.
lost our quorum.
Second.
The meeting has ended.